So, what if a small, ignored signal from your body was actually a blaring alarm bell? Today, we're going to follow a deeply personal story that kicks off with a health crisis and ends up questioning pretty much everything we've been told about our food, our medicine, and our own health. It's a journey that, honestly, might just change how you listen to your own body.
And yeah, it all kicks off with this. Just a raw, completely unfiltered reaction. Because, let's be real, when your whole world gets flipped upside down by a medical diagnosis, sometimes, what else is there to say? The author was so sure she had it all figured out. A great diet, healthy life, hardly ever got sick. But there was this one little thing, a thing she'd been ignoring, and it was about to spiral completely out of control and just shatter that whole idea of perfect health.
Okay, so this brings us right to the moment it all went down. You know that tiny signal her body had been sending for a whole year? Well, it wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a full-on alarm bell, and there was absolutely no way to ignore.
So here's the play-by-play. For more than a year, there was this sore on her foot that just wouldn't heal. She kind of blew it off, thinking, oh, it's just the dry air. Then bam! She wakes up one morning and her foot is incredibly inflamed. She goes to the doctor, they take one look and basically say, yep, that's a serious infection. You need antibiotics, like right now.
And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. This is the moment that makes it all terrifyingly real. A nurse practitioner at a wound clinic just lays it all out on the table, no sugarcoating. You have a 50-50 chance of losing your left foot. I mean, can you imagine? This wasn't just some infection anymore. We're talking about a potential amputation.
So with her foot literally on the line, she's at this massive crossroads. She's got the conventional medical path right in front of her. But she starts doing her own research, and she finds something else entirely, a totally different option.
And get this, both paths were offering the exact same treatment, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. But the conventional clinic, they quoted her an unbelievable $60,000. And she'd have to wait a month to even start because of some Medicare rule. Meanwhile, a quick Google search leads her to a functional medicine clinic. They could get her in the very next day for about $1,000. The choice was a no-brainer. It wasn't just about the money. It was about getting help immediately. So naturally, she took that second path, and that's what introduced her to this whole world of functional medicine. Now, this approach is different. It's not just about slapping a Band-Aid on the symptoms. It asks this incredibly simple yet profound question that, conventional medicine often just doesn't. It asks, why? Why is this happening in the first place? What's the real underlying root cause? And that one little question, what's the root cause? Well, that led to the single most important discovery of her entire life. She started to realize the infection, that wasn't the real problem at all. It was just a symptom, a sign of something much, much deeper going on inside her body. The deeper she dug, the clearer it all became. That nasty infection, it was just the final, desperate scream for help from her body. And that little sore that wouldn't heal for a whole year, that wasn't just bad luck. That was her body trying and trying and trying to tell her that something was fundamentally wrong. And the root cause, the big why behind everything, it was insulin resistance. So what is that? Think of it like this. Your cells have little doors, and insulin is the key that lets sugar in for energy. With insulin resistance, the locks get rusty. The key doesn't work anymore. So the sugar can't get in, and it just builds up in your bloodstream, creating this toxic environment. And guess what one of the classic but so often ignored signs is? You got it. Sores that just won't heal.
Now, you might be thinking, this is some rare, obscure condition. No way. According to research from Dr. Benjamin Bickman, a staggering, and I mean staggering, 88% of Americans have some level of insulin resistance. This isn't some fringe issue, folks. It is a full-blown, silent epidemic.
So once she started tackling this root cause head-on, the change was profound. It was so much more than just her foot getting better. It was like a total system-wide shift. I love how she puts it. She said she felt an inner rebooting, like her entire operating system was being upgraded. For the first time in who knows how long, her body was actually coming back into balance.
Okay, so how did she do it? How do you reboot your entire system? The answer wasn't in some pill or a fancy medical procedure. Nope.
It was in the most basic, fundamental thing we all do every single day, what she was putting on her plate.
And this might have been the toughest pill to swallow. She had always been so proud of her healthy diet. But it turns out the very staples she was eating all the time, things like bread, tortillas, even cheese, were the exact foods that were keeping her insulin jacked up and literally driving the disease.
Her whole experience just proves this pretty shocking conclusion from experts like the late, great Dr. Sarah Hallberg. To actually reverse this condition, the very first step is to completely ignore decades of official dietary guidelines. I mean, think about that. The advice was telling people to eat the very things that were making them sick.
Let's break it down. At its core, what we're talking about here is basically a state of carbohydrate toxicity. It's pretty simple, really. We eat way too many carbs, our blood sugar spikes like crazy. So our body floods the system with insulin to try and deal with it. But if you do that over and over and over, our cells just get exhausted from all the noise. They start ignoring the signal. That's the resistance part. And then the sugar has nowhere to go, and you're stuck in this horrible, vicious cycle.
Okay, so what this journey really shows us is that her story, it isn't just her story. It's a mirror. It's a reflection of a much, much bigger systemic problem with our food, with our medicine, and with our entire approach to health.
Just let this number sink in for a second. The CDC says over 100 million adults in the U.S. are now living with diabetes or prediabetes. 100 million. That's more than 1 out of every 3 adults. This isn't just a bunch of people making bad choices. This is the totally predictable outcome of the broken system we're all swimming in.
So, how in the world do we get here? Well, let's take a look back. For decades, the official advice, you remember the old food pyramid from 1992? It told us to build our entire diet on a giant foundation of carbs. We're talking 6 to 11 servings a day of bread, cereal, rice, pasta. And we now know that those guidelines, which were super influenced by big agriculture, they basically vilified healthy fats and championed the exact processed carbs that directly fuel this whole epidemic.
And the timing? It's not a coincidence. As Dr. Zach Bush points out, what happened next lines up perfectly. We saw the most profound explosion of chronic disease in all of human history. We did what they told us. We followed the rules. And as a whole society, we got sicker. Then you have the system that's supposed to treat us, and it's built on these completely conflicting incentives. There's this famous, or maybe infamous, quote from a pharmaceutical CEO who basically said, hey, our goal isn't to cure patients, our goal is to make money for our shareholders. I mean, when profit is the main driver, you have to ask yourself, are the incentives really, truly aligned with keeping people healthy?
So where does this leave all of us? It all comes back to that small, ignored signal the author's journey started with. Her story is a powerful reminder that our bodies are always talking to us. It shows us, plain as day, that our system is deeply flawed and that a lot of what we're told to eat is, frankly, toxic. So the real question, the one that this whole story leaves us with, is the one you have to ask yourself. Are you listening?